Hey Beyond the Gates fans, it's Radhika from Radhika, and we're going to talk about today's Beyond the Gates drama. But first, please hit subscribe if you're not already following us. So, today on Beyond the Gates, we saw Danny doing something that was actually pretty grounded for once, which, I know that alone feels like a twist. Nicole set things in motion in that cryptic way soaps love, telling Vernon and Anita that Danny had news, and immediately they were worried, because apparently it had been a while since their daughter had a full crash out, which was shady and funny, and also probably fair. They invited her over with that nervous family energy, clearly afraid the next sentence out of her mouth was going to involve Bill, a scandal, or some fresh disaster. And Danny actually reassured them, falsely at least, that nothing was happening with Bill. Which, whenever a character has to lead with it's not that, you know what follows is still going to be bad. Then she told them Naomi has the BRCA gene and the whole mood just dropped. Anita immediately started blaming herself, which was heartbreaking and also very believable because that kind of guilt moves fast in families. But Danny, to her credit, told her Naomi doesn't want their tears and doesn't want their guilt. She just needs them there for her, on her terms. I liked that. It was blunt, but it was useful, and honestly sometimes Danny is at her best when she stops performing and just tells the truth. Now, Anita said she could do that, but she still broke down in tears, which was crushing, and Vernon left the room, which let the scene turn even more intense. Because once he was gone, Danny went somewhere a little more complicated. She urged Anita to talk Naomi out of getting a double mastectomy. And that right there is where things got messy. Because supporting Naomi is one thing. Quietly trying to steer Naomi's decision through her mother is another thing entirely. So even in one of Danny's better emotional moments, there was still that classic Danny edge, that little need to control the outcome. And you just know that kind of pressure can come back around in a big way. Then we moved over to Orphe Jeans, where Elon invited Isaiah to meet because he wanted to mend fences. Isaiah only showed up because he thought something had happened, like somebody was sick or hurt, which already tells you how badly this relationship has gone sideways. He wasn't showing up hopeful. He was showing up braced for impact. Elon told him the family was fine, and that he just wanted to extend an olive branch, and of course that did not magically make everything warm and easy, because these two started rehashing old wounds almost immediately, and honestly, I thought the writing there did a good job of showing how generational pain works. Nobody was screaming. Nobody was totally unglued. But every line had years behind it. Elon said he wanted to heal generational wounds and told Isaiah he was happy he had found something he's good at and that that's all he ever wanted for him. Now, was that a perfect apology? Not exactly. It still had a little bit of that elder family member tone where they want credit for intentions more than accountability for impact. But still, it landed enough that Isaiah stayed for a second cup of coffee, and in soap terms that is practically a peace treaty. And at another table, Vanessa was over there gushing to Nicole about Deanna warming up to Joey. Nicole, being smarter than half the room as usual, warned her to manage her expectations. Which is just solid advice in general on a soap, because whenever someone starts celebrating too early, the writers start sharpening knives. Then the conversation shifted to Nicole's love life, and she said Kyle fulfills all her emotional and physical needs, but she doesn't want to stop having the time of her life with both him and Carlton. And look, Nicole is clearly enjoying herself, and I'm not here to police a grown woman's fun, but anytime a character says they've got exactly the arrangement they want, I start hearing ominous music in my head. Now over with Marcel, things got irritating fast. He was having some dirty talk over the phone with Leslie, which, fine, live your life. But then he pivoted into trying to assign Jacob another undercover case, even though that is Elon's lane, not his. And that overstep was not subtle. Marcel wanted Jacob to go undercover and get info on a prisoner's crew, and he framed it like this golden opportunity, telling him he couldn't ride the coattails of one bust forever, and that this was his chance to prove he was more than just the chief's son. Which, wow, talk about poking directly at a sore spot. That was manipulative, and Jacob clearly knew it. He passed on the offer, saying he needed to stay close to home right now, and good for him, honestly, because every great opportunity on a soap tends to come wrapped in danger, pressure, and regret. Then Elon found out Marcel had made the offer and absolutely reamed him out, reminding him who the chief is and that he better not forget it. I loved that. Short, sharp, and deserved. Marcel was way out of bounds there, and Elon did not even try to sugarcoat it. Then we got the hospital thread, and this one was quietly loaded. Eva was talking to Kyle and trying to get a read on how Kat's PT sessions are going. Kyle, in this very slippery, hypothetically way, let it be known that Kat is no longer on the PT roster and is doing quite well. He also backed up Ted's insistence that Eva not return to work yet and focus on recovering, which makes sense on paper, but you know how these scenes work. The practical advice is never just practical. It always plants something. Then Shanice showed up for her appointment, and Eva noticed that Shanice was glowing, assuming that glow had something to do with her dad. Which, yes, correct, because later Shanice absolutely gushed to Kyle that she and Ted had declared their love. And right as she's basking in that milestone, in walks Nicole. The timing was perfect in that terrible soap way. Nicole and Kyle started flirting hard, then took it to the privacy of her office, and after making out, Kyle accidentally let slip that Ted and Shanice are in the love stage of their relationship. Now, that was the cat fully out of the bag. Nicole said she knows that's the next step for them, but it still feels strange. And I think that reaction makes total sense. Sometimes you can intellectually accept something and still feel weird when it becomes more real, more official, more emotionally serious. Kyle was understanding, but then he asked if she'd been holding out hope for her and Ted. And that is the kind of question that sounds simple until it detonates everything around it. Because if the answer is yes, even a little, then Nicole's current setup may not be as carefree as she keeps insisting it is. So that was the recap, and honestly, there were a lot of emotional landmines buried in a relatively calm-looking episode. Nobody went full berserk, nobody ended up 6 feet under. Nobody launched a reign of terror, and yet the whole hour felt like one long inhale before the panic starts. And that brings me to what I think is coming next. First up, I really think Naomi's BRCA storyline is about to create a serious divide inside the family, and not because they don't love her, but because they love her in very different ways. I suspect Anita is going to be torn between supporting Naomi's autonomy and being unable to emotionally handle the idea of a double mastectomy. Danny already nudged her in that direction, urging her to talk Naomi out of it, and that is not a small thing. That is Danny planting herself right in the middle of a deeply personal medical decision. So even though Danny framed the earlier part beautifully, saying Naomi needs support on her terms, she immediately undercut that by trying to influence the outcome behind the scenes. That contradiction is not going away. And I'm betting Naomi will sense it. You always know on these shows when a family says, "We're here for you," but they really mean, "We're here for you as long as you choose what we can live with." If Naomi starts getting pressure from Anita, especially emotional pressure dressed up as concern, I could absolutely see her feeling betrayed. Not because they don't care, but because they are making her crisis about their fear. And that is how support starts turning into suffocation. Next, I think Anita may end up at the center of this in a way she is not ready for. Vernon may grieve quietly. Danny may talk loudly. But Anita is the one who broke down, the one who instantly blamed herself, the one most likely to internalize this until she can barely function. And when someone is that loaded with guilt, they can become very easy to sway. Danny knows that. Honestly, Danny probably counted on that. So I wonder if we're heading toward a situation where Anita tries to save Naomi from making a permanent decision, only to realize too late that she has crossed a line Naomi cannot forgive quickly. That could be the real shocker here. Not the diagnosis itself, but the family fallout after it. Because on soaps, the medical news is often just the match. The real fire is who tries to control what happens next. Another possibility is that Danny's role in this becomes much more complicated than it looks right now. On one hand, she was the messenger. She was the one who told Vernon and Anita not to drown Naomi in guilt and tears. On the other hand, the second she got Anita alone, she started lobbying. So I could see Danny convincing herself that she's being practical, protective, even loving, while everyone around her starts seeing that she is doing what she always does, trying to direct other people's lives when she's terrified of losing control. And if Naomi finds out Danny was behind any effort to sway Anita, forget hurt feelings, that could trigger a full family disaster. Now let's talk about Elon and Isaiah because I actually think that scene was more fragile than hopeful. Yes, Isaiah stayed for a second coffee. And yes, Elon made a real effort, but I'm not convinced one warmish conversation erases years of damage. I suspect this is the beginning of a thaw, not a fix. Elon saying he's happy Isaiah found something he's good at sounded supportive, but it also kind of sounded like the first time he said it out loud, which is not exactly ideal. I mean, better late than never, sure, but late still counts. So, I could see Isaiah wanting to believe this olive branch is genuine while still waiting for the old patterns to kick back in. That's the tension that feels real to me. And honestly, that is usually where a show gets the best material, not in instant reconciliation, but in the awkward, stop-and-start process of people trying not to hurt each other the exact same way again. Let me know what you think, because I know some viewers are going to take that second coffee as pure progress, but I'm side-eyeing it a little. Warm coffee does not erase cold history. Here's another one. Marcel overstepping with Jacob feels like the beginning of a power struggle, not a one-off annoyance. He did not just make a suggestion. He tried to dangle ambition in front of Jacob while stepping outside his authority and undercutting Elon. That tells me Marcel either thinks he can get away with it or wants to test how far he can push things. Neither option is comforting. And Jacob saying no because he needs to stay close to home right now tells me there's already vulnerability there, some reason he knows he cannot afford to be pulled too far out. I'm betting this undercover offer comes back around. Maybe not in the exact same form, but I do not think the show brought it up just to drop it. My guess is Jacob will be tempted again, especially if being the chief's son keeps getting weaponized against him. That phrase landed for a reason. It hit his pride. It hit his identity. And when pride gets poked often enough on a soap, eventually somebody makes a reckless choice just to prove they're not weak. So while Jacob did the smart thing today, I would not relax just yet. And Elon reaming Marcel out may not be the end of that either. If anything, it might deepen whatever resentment or competition Marcel is already carrying. I wonder if Marcel starts making end runs around Elon more often, maybe more subtly next time, maybe in a way that is harder to pin down. Because once a character oversteps that boldly, they usually do not suddenly become respectful. They just get sneakier. Now, on the hospital side, I think Nicole just got a reality check she was not expecting. She has been enjoying this very free, very playful, very I have everything I want setup, and Kyle has been feeding into that energy beautifully. But hearing that Ted and Shanice have declared their love made it more concrete. It turned Ted from an ex who moved on into a man building something serious with someone else. That hits differently. And Kyle asking whether she was still holding out hope for Ted tells me the show wants us to sit in that discomfort. I could absolutely see Nicole insisting she's fine while being not remotely fine. Honestly, that would be very human. Sometimes you don't know what still matters to you until someone else locks it down. So even if Nicole truly loves the freedom she has right now, Ted entering this more committed stage with Shanice may stir up old feelings, old ego wounds, or just old habits. And if that happens, Kyle may suddenly find himself in the weird position of being emotionally available to a woman who maybe isn't as emotionally uncomplicated as advertised. Another possibility is that Kyle's slip-up becomes a bigger problem than it seems. He did not reveal a state secret, but he did pass along intimate emotional information casually, and on soaps that kind of loose end can turn into a full plot engine. Nicole now knows more than she was supposed to know in that moment, and once someone knows something, even by accident, they usually end up acting on it in some way. I wonder if Nicole starts reassessing Ted and Shanice through a new lens, maybe pulling back, maybe testing herself, maybe even getting a little competitive without meaning to. It would not have to be malicious to get messy. And poor Shanice may be the one most at risk if Nicole starts spiraling emotionally. Because from Shanice's point of view, she is happy. She is glowing. She is in love. She is having her milestone moment. Those are exactly the kinds of blissful soap moments that tend to get sideswiped by other people's unresolved baggage. I'm not saying Nicole is about to go diabolical. I am saying happiness on a soap is basically a giant target. And last but not least, I think Vanessa needs to take Nicole's warning very seriously, because all that excitement about Deanna warming up to Joey feels like it's setting her up for a letdown. Anytime someone starts narrating their own happy ending too early, I get nervous. Nicole telling her to manage expectations did not feel random. It felt like the writers sliding a caution sign right into the scene. So I could see Vanessa getting ahead of herself, assuming progress equals permanence, and then getting crushed when reality proves more complicated. That may not be the biggest story on the canvas right now, but it has "Don't Celebrate Yet" written all over it. And I do want to say one quick thing about Eva, because even though she was not at the center of the hour, her scenes felt like setup. Kyle and Ted both pushing her to stay off work and focus on recovery may be perfectly sensible, but sometimes on soaps, sensible advice becomes the thing that leaves a character out of the loop just long enough for other people's secrets to grow. So I'm keeping an eye on that too. Eva asking questions and getting half answers is not nothing. So if I had to put it all together, I'd say today's episode was really about control, about who gets to shape the next step when emotions are already running high. Danny wants to shape Naomi's medical choice without saying that too loudly. Elon wants to reshape his relationship with Isaiah before it slips away for good. Marcel wants to shape Jacob's career, or at least test his influence over it. Nicole wants to believe she can shape her own romantic world into exactly the fun arrangement she prefers, even as Ted's life keeps moving forward without her. And the problem with all of that is simple. Life, especially soap life, does not stay shaped for long. My personal verdict is that Naomi's diagnosis is going to trigger the biggest fallout, and Danny quietly pushing Anita to influence Naomi will make the whole thing far uglier than it needs to be. We'll see. Thank you for being a loyal listener. Follow us wherever you get your podcast because you don't want to miss the next episode. Rodica is on all the major podcast platforms including Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more.